Hey, welcome back to another exciting episode of YOML. And as you know, it's a year of magical learning. Today, believe it or not, we're on book 99, one
That's
from the century mark.
why is that is that like a thing or is it a
I'm a Houston Texans fan.
JJ
JJ Watt
Watt?
is my favorite
Yeah,
football player,
there
right?
you
Number
go.
99. So I love the Houston Texans. I love JJ Watt, and he's one of those guys that is a role model for a lot of people, and he's just a great guy overall. Um,
Seems like it. You never know
Okay.
from what you can see. Yeah,
From what I see, he's a role model that you can
yeah,
take after to have better future or better yourself or whatever. I think he works hard. He's humble from what I see.
right,
I can't say in the private quarters of his home or
right.
whatever, but so far, until data and evidence prove otherwise, he's a great guy to me.
Yeah, I would say the same sentiment as well. I feel like, especially going through this whole journey, it's kind of a fun conversation to even think about because, you just really never know who people really are. So many people try to hide who they really are to come off a certain way. I think of heroes that I've had that are sporting heroes of the world that just treat people like shit and are gambling addicts, or Tiger Woods, who's got a whole other secret life of cheating on his wife every single night.
Will
I
Smith.
mean, yeah, exactly. Or I mean, it's the list goes on and on and on of these heroes and idols of that have taken a fall and tumble from grace. Like Peyton Manning was my childhood hero growing up, and I don't know, I've heard
What's wrong with Peyton Manning?
well I around town we've heard that he likes to drink a lot and he sleeps around on his wife a little bit.
Is this even
But
has any evidence? I mean,
right. I
we
mean,
can't we can't really judge somebody based on somebody. I mean, I can go and say something about somebody
right.
and spread rumors, and it's not fair to him, even if he is a great guy. I mean, it's just not fair to him that people,
Exactly.
because I'm jealous and I'm envy of what you have and what you've built, right? And then I just trying to ruin you. So I
Yeah.
mean, for me, it's like, until you give me evidence, right? I'm not gonna be like very stickler to one side or another. Give me evidence, give me some data, give me something that I can ponder upon and make the decision for myself.
If that stuff is true, it's just one dimension of somebody's life that like they can always learn and grow. Like that's what this whole journey's been about. Is
It's
like
not
you can
like no one can make mistakes, it's
exactly
it's
like
everybody is
nobody's
dealing with some
infallible.
kind of
Yeah.
struggles or demons that they kind of have to overcome, and
Right.
sometimes it's not pretty.
I like to think of like, are they on an upward spiral of trying to, even if they do get lost a little bit through it, like a Tiger Woods, right? I look
You
at
make a
his life.
small boo-boo, or you can make many small boo-boos, or you can make one huge gigantic boo-boo, right? It's one
Right.
of those things where you look at Hitler, right? And he's like perfect citizen, perfect model, but then he make a huge boo-boo. Say, hey,
I don't know if
these
that's
guys are not worthy. I need to get rid of them, right?
right. I mean, it is an interesting conversation. Certainly, we'll talk about this actually in other reflections to come, but it is interesting. Anyway, on to the actual reflection for the day.
All right. I mean, we're here to learn. We're here to reflect on the values that we hold.
Agreed. It is crazy that we're almost at book 100. Is a book called Never Split the Difference: Negotiating as if your life depended on it, by the author Chris Voss. You're the one that introduced me to this book, so I'll let you give a quick summary of the book if you don't mind.
Right. So the book, it's written by Chris Voss. If you guys don't know, it's one of the top negotiator. When things are tough, they call him in, and he's the one that's going to get you out of hostage situations. And he basically trained and wrote a book on how to negotiate. So he is incredibly, in his own right, very authoritative in this manner. So never split the difference. Essentially saying, when you're negotiating a hostage, you don't want a 50-50, hey, kill half and give me the half.
Right.
I mean, you
There's
don't
no
want
there's no
to,
win-win.
right?
Yeah.
It has to negotiate in a way that they have to release all the hostages, not just half, because so that's where they never the split the difference came from. You want to be able to persuade people in a way that you are getting all of the thing that you want. But at the same time, in order for you to do that, right, there are certain things that you have to do psychologically. The book goes through the recalling of the events that happened, and he's kind of break down the concept of what to use and how he used it in those real life situations.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a great summary. I think it actually, ironically, kind of ties into 7 habits, and one of the habits is win-win. Think win-win, right? Like it's a true. You can't split a win-win. And both parties have to get what they want.
About
Negotiate.
compromising.
Right.
It's about
Exactly.
how do we structure this deal.
Right. Right. That's never splitting the difference. Kind of thing. It's not like just accepting it
Yeah.
and moving on. So I think that was a good synopsis of this. So what this book made me think about, and I think I'm probably stretching this lesson a little bit, but for whatever weird reason, my brain went to the idea of like embracing conflict on this one. And I started off this reflection by saying, like, you ever get to the point in time where you're in this conversation with somebody and you're just like, this just sucks. It's like a waste of time. Like, I'm just done with this conversation. I don't know what we're even talking about anymore. This is just pointless. I don't know why we're fighting. I don't know why we're arguing. I'm just walking away. Like, this isn't even worth my time. Well, that idea, you see it all the time, whether you're on a social media message board where you see forever long chains going on and you're just like, what are you guys doing? You meet somebody at a party and they're talking about Roe versus Wade or something like that, and you're just going back and forth. We just did our last Why Are You Yelling session, and we talked about that because it's one of those topics that there is just no answer to. And that there's going to always be really strong opinions on either side. And yeah, you can sit there and force yourself to find a way through, but you're just probably not going to. People are one of the reflections on the future is you can never win an argument, really. I mean, you'll never actually win an argument if your goal is to convince somebody else of your opinion, because like they don't see through the same paradigm that you see. They don't see the same lens that you see. So a lot of times, what's the point? Why do we even do this in the first place? What is the point of conflict? What is the point of arguing about Roe versus Wade? What is the point of arguing about all this other crap that we always argue about? And it just made me start to think like there's got to be something to gain. And all this was with the lens of Chris Voss, right? Chris Voss didn't have a choice. Like, he is put into these situations where he has to get all the hostages out. He has to go into this battle with somebody that's irrational, that's stupid, that you can't, like, why would you waste your time with this person that's clearly unhinged, but unfortunately for him, he doesn't have a choice. He's in it or he's not, and he's got to do his job or he's not going to do his job. So while we don't agree with the extremes of life, this journey is one of our values at Clubany, and one of my personal core values, and I know one of yours is balance in general. Well, while we don't necessarily, the extreme side of everything is not where we want to go. And in an odd way, when you go to the extremes, you can learn a lot of lessons. And that's where you get guys like Chris Voss thrown into this extreme environment of, like, if you do not engage with this person and find a path forward, somebody will die, and that's pretty insane. You know what I mean? So it makes me think, in general, the benefits of embracing that conflict. Like, I mean, it's one of those things, maybe have to do it to the level of what he's going through. But at the same time, if you take that lesson out of what he did and how he found a way through in that extreme situation, and you brought it back to a more balanced environment, there's just so many things you can learn when you have to be in a conflict with somebody. You have to get out of your own shoes. You have to be able to embrace their perspective and see things from their side, have empathy, shift your paradigms, right? You have to be able to put yourself in their shoes. You have to be able to mirror back what they're saying and understand what they're feeling. All these things are things that if you don't want to engage in something and you're not willing to have that fight in a normal day-to-day setting, you're never going to learn those lessons. You're never going to learn how to see things from somebody else's perspective and how to feel things from other people. Because at the end of the day, the goal of all this is human connection, right? The goal of all this is understanding ourselves and meaningful work and meaningful relationships. And meaningful relationships a lot of times have conflict in it. And that's, a big lesson that I've learned over the course of this year. One of my values is don't do it alone. And, sometimes sometimes we're going to have conflict about how we see things. Anybody that we bring into Clubany and we're going through how this whole thing is supposed to work, they're going to have conflict. I think of Amanda when she's like, guys, I don't want to start a business like this. I'll do the club stuff, but I don't want to do the company stuff. And then us having to go, well, wait a minute. Tell me why. If we always avoided a conflict, we never learn, we never grow, we never develop even deeper relationships around these things. So that's the lesson for the day and kind of my stretch. I'll pause there. Love to get your thoughts on this one, but yeah, this one definitely was a stretch lesson for me on this particular book. But yeah, love to get your thoughts.
So for me, I think I may have understood the meaning of the word conflict. Because I think from hearing what you're saying, it's not about conflict, it's about seeing something different. I mean, I don't have a conflict with Amanda per se.
No.
Right? Because I don't take offense what she said. Right? And so for me, conflict to me is like I'm personally and emotionally against what you say. I'm taking it to the personal level versus, hey, you say, I think this and I think that. And what I'm hearing is that I just don't understand the differences. And for me, the reflection is I would like to change it to be eager to learn the differences. And for me, this book in particular, it is very comparable to the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of the I guess the habit would be seek first to understand, then to be understood. I think most of the example that Chris Voss walks us through in terms of how he handle negotiation is all about understanding the other person. Why are they doing this? What's their
Right. What's their
motive,
needs?
right?
What's their, it's nonviolent communication, really, is what it is.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
So you can take this book, right, and you compare it to Seek First to Understand and to Be Understood. It's exactly the same lesson, the same concept.
Right.
Right. And for me, that is very impactful for me as the student of this journey. It's just because, for a conflict to occur, only when you take it personally, because you can say something and I don't understand it. And it's just basically you see something that I have not seen. So I
Right.
just want to know, okay, Chris, can you tell me what you see? And can you maybe help me understand better? And that essentially give me two perspectives, one from mine and one from yours. That is what I'm actually doing. I'm
Right.
actually trying to learn from you what you see, because if I face this west and you face this east, right, I'm not going to see the sun and vice versa.
Getting on the right map, right? We talked about
The
this.
conflict is say, well, I see the sun and say, I don't see the sun. You're lying, right? You offend me. And that is when conflict. But if you don't take it personally, you don't take offense to it. It's all about, hey, there's a perspective I haven't seen yet. Okay, now what are you going to do about it? Do you want to see what I see? And
Right.
all I have to, I mean, you and I do this all the time. I tell you what I see, but whatever you see, you say to me, it's like, okay, I really want to know. I'm actually pretty eager to understand from your perspective what they're seeing, because I know that I'm missing something, I have my blind spot. I want to know how to fill in that blind spot.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
That's
and so,
that's exactly what I was trying to get across in this.
yes,
It's an
and I
opportunity to
agree.
learn. Yeah.
Yes, and I agree with what you were saying. It's just the wording
Right.
of conflict. I may have misunderstood the definition of conflict, but if I'm wrong, then conflict is it's what it is. But for me,
Right.
for whatever reason, I'm attached. I have this image of conflict as having something that I don't agree with, and I took it personally. And when I do that, it's like I'm not discussing it with you anymore. I'm just saying, hey, I don't agree, blah. And I
Right.
put up my hand and I put up my wall and I walk away. To me, that's a conflict. But if you don't take it personally, it's just, hey, you see something that I haven't seen. That's
Yeah.
what I'm seeing.
100%. Like, you're just taking in the inputs and trying to build a new perspective out of it. And if you want to, that's why I said embrace conflict, because I think we're saying the same thing. Like that,
You're right.
it is
Embrace the
it is a conflict,
differences and
right?
eager to learn the differences. And
Right.
because from that, I think you can be able to, for one, adhere to the core values of learning. And two, you're able to be able to communicate with that person and learn more, because learning, so we're talking about having learning versus understanding. If you
Right.
don't, I guess, converse and trade your perspectives, you cannot understand. You cannot move to the next level of learning. Like learning, you have, like, I know this of, how this works, whatever, but I don't really understand until I can actually be able to envision it, have it attached to some visual, emotional phases or whatever. And I
Right.
think in order for you to get to that level, you need to have the ability to see the other person's perspective, feel what it's like to be in that situation and kind of simulate the situation as if we're there.
Right.
But if I have only mine, there's no way that I can understand yours, and I'll be blind by what I don't see, because I can only see the front, I can't see the back. Right? If you and I were facing each other, I see what's behind you and you see what's behind me. I can only see what's in front of me, but not behind me. But think
Right.
about it. If I talk to you, that means I see in front of me and I also get what you see behind me. Therefore, I see from both sides.
Yeah. I think that's a great perspective to look at it. And I think this is a really key point for meaningful work. We talk a lot about that, right? Like doing the things that you love to do and creating the art you love to create. Meaningful relationships, though, is a different beast altogether. I don't think you can find meaningful relationships unless you're willing to challenge yourself and to get outside your own. You can't just say, this is what I like to do and this is how I'm going to communicate with everybody. That's just not how relationships can develop. Like you have to be able to see things from somebody else's perspective. And that's probably been one of the biggest changes that I've seen in my own life is similar to what you were talking about, seeing different perspectives. Was, the biggest conflict of my life, if you want to call it a conflict, was what I went through with my daughter in the past couple of years. I've never learned more about humanity and myself and how other people interact and how to interact with other people, and the platinum rule and all these other things, because I was willing to say, like, okay, fine, if this is my life, then I have to figure out, how can I see things differently? How can I understand things differently? How can I observe what you're doing differently? How can I behave differently? How can I respond differently to these things? I mean, like, these are when the conflict happens is when a lot of questions, you're forced to ask yourself a lot of questions. Now, are you willing to listen to those questions? That's up to you. That's only you can decide at that point in time. The examples that I was given at the beginning of this thing of, you're at a dinner party with somebody and they want to argue about, Roe versus Wade. And you're like, I'm just here to eat some good food and have a couple glasses of wine and relax on a Friday night. I don't want to do this. That's why we have the Why Are You Yelling session for people that do want to do it, just to get it out of their system so they don't have to wait to find that random person at a bar to be like, you just don't understand what it's like to
just
to,
upload
blah,
all
blah,
that
yeah.
anger
Right,
and
right,
hostility
right.
onto that poor. I just want to drink my beer.
Right. So I think there's a time and place for these things, but it's also like, I know for a fact I would learn a lot if somebody was really passionate and wanted to talk to me about Roe versus Wade or something along those lines. I would probably learn a whole lot about their life, and I could probably take a lot of lessons from my own self and see the things behind me that maybe I'm not seeing, like you were saying.
Right.
But that's the start of a meaningful relationship developing, too. Like when somebody feels heard, they feel seen, they feel understood, they feel where they're coming from matters. Like that only happens through conflict. And I mean, I have to assume that Chris Voss, when he's doing his job, like I kind of wonder, like, do they have like this deep relationship where they go have a beer every once in a while? And like, I mean, I wonder, like, what do those relationships look like for him, with these people that he's successfully, I don't know, I guess probably stopped something terrible from happening,
I mean, it's essentially saving them.
Well, and him though, too. I mean, he learned all this stuff. Like, think about, I mean, he wrote a book. This is his meaningful work, and meaningful relationships coming together in this environment as well. This is right in line with that nonviolent communication, seek first to understand, the interpersonal connectivity.
Right.
That is such an important lesson to understand. Like, look, you're going to have conflict with people. You got to work through it, or don't, but you're probably not going to have a whole lot of meaningful relationships.
Like I said, conflict is only when you have, because if you, for example, if you say, hey, Roe versus Wade, and I have no interest in talking, there's no conflict.
Well, there is a conflict. I want to express something and you don't want to listen. Like, that's a conflict for me. If I wanted to share something and you're just like, I don't want to hear you. There's no engagement that happened, but that doesn't mean that the conflict wasn't there. You were saying, like, I don't want to jump into this. The conflict exists, though. It doesn't mean the conflict doesn't exist just because you don't engage.
Okay, but if that's the case, there's nothing I can do. If I don't want to talk about it, you have your right to talk about it, and I have a right to listen or walk away. Totally. So for me, it's like, okay, there is a certain limitations to what the word conflict means to me, and how do I deal with it. That's the definition that I'm kind of like imagining in my head.
Imagine how connected you would be to so many other people if you just walked up to some protest and just started asking people
I'll
questions.
give you a piece of my mind.
But that's the thing. Like, can you imagine all the meaningful relationships you would develop if you walked into a highly charged environment of people that you knew had like a, were there for conflict, and you were just like, tell me what, let's just talk. Like, I mean, it just opens the door to so many opportunities for learning and questions that,
right,
if you look at it from that perspective. If you don't, then you're right.
I think humanity has the ability to seek first to understand, then to be understood. I think that's universally something that we all have as a human being. Whether you choose to exercise that power, we have the ability to, between the space between stimulus and response, right? Stimulus and response, you have the power to choose, right? That's your power. You can utilize it or you don't. Same thing with the ability to seek first to understand and to be understood. I mean, you can create a relationship because you understand them, and because of them, because once you understand them, you can see from their perspective, and you can use that to nudge them into seeing your perspective. And then that's how you get people to relate to what you're trying to do. Right. And so for me, it's like their freedom of the free will to engage or don't engage. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of people you don't engage because you don't think it's worth your time, but there are always going to be times when you're going to have to use that card, because you're going to be married, you're going to have kids, you have parents, or you're going to have aunts and uncles. You're not like you can run away from that. And so you're going to have to utilize this power one way or another, right? You can choose to ignore it, but you can ignore it only to a certain extent.
I 100% agree that you have the power to choose and walk away. I guess what I was encouraging people to do with this reflection is to run at it. Like my boss's boss is somebody that I really like.
Is it greater?
No, not greater, but he's a really good dude.
It's a boss is a boss, right?
Right. He's a
Yes,
level
I'm
above.
playing
But,
with you.
but he always has a saying where he always says like run at problems, and he says it all the time.
Only the problem that's important to you.
No, well, so here's the thing: is like his kind of philosophy is if there's any problem, just run at it, like and you'll see what happens. Like I mean, you never know what's going to come on the other side.
With this problem with communist China,
I'm sure there could be.
I'm saying there's limits to what you can do. You can't be all at all places at once. So
right,
you have to choose.
This is about balance.
If you're a beaver, why are you trying to figure out how to dig a hole like an Arctic fox in the snow or in the Arctic somewhere? I just know it's still
agree.
a problem.
Let me preface this. These reflections.
This is talking about in terms of embracing conflict. I'm eager to learn from your perspective because to me, this is important and I like to talk about it. It doesn't matter how absurd it is because I still trying to learn. I'm not saying what I'm saying is correct or anything. I'm saying this is what I see as far as limited capacity. And I take no offense whether what I say or what you say. And to me, this is embracing the differences and eager to learn the other person's perspective and point of view.
I agree. I totally agree with everything you're saying. If anything, we're in complete harmony on this because the answer really is balance, right? Sometimes choose conflict when it aligns to your values, or something where you can grow with your values, but it should always be a balanced proposition. In this particular book, it was a completely unbalanced extreme example, right? It's its job.
If I'm, God forbid, taken hostage by some organizations, I want this guy to come.
Exactly.
And save me. Please come. Save me, Chris.
And if you got to argue about politics or something like that, I guess I'd rather have Don Lemon and Sean Hannity, because that's what they do. They just want to argue about whatever they want to argue about. That's what they argue every night, and I'm okay with that. Or like Mike Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser on, pardon the interruption.
Hey, and Skip, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's their job, right? Like, and that's an extreme conflict example. And these people really embrace conflict, which is fine. But I guess the overarching theme is I feel like there's so much to learn when there is a conflict that it's worth our time. But to your point, like you can't always do that. So then it comes down to pick and choose what's important to you. And then if there's a conflict that arises around that,
well, I think if you want to run at conflict, right? Just prioritize what the order of importance, and you can run as many as you want. Just run to the conflict that matters to you the most first. Right. And if you have time, you can go and run at the other things that is far from the top of the list. Right. And I would say if you're like an eagle beaver, you want to run at like 100 or thousands of conflict, so be it. But make sure you prioritize the important one first. Put first things first.
Agreed.
Never split the difference. It's not a compromise. Exactly. It's not a compromise because I wholly agree with that in terms of, because like I said, it's creating different structures of the deal to make it like, hey, we both 100% agree on it. I'm not conceding anything to you and you're not conceding anything to me. It's just the structuring is different. Hey, I think that's just something we could 100% get behind.
Right. We both agree that conflict is important. Sometimes it can be important. A great learning lesson. I mean, we also both agree that you shouldn't do it all the time. Or if you are going to do it all the time, it better be for something that's super important. Stay balanced. I
mean, you think about it, you have to, balance, it's subjective. Because for you, hey, you play tennis every day or every week or whatever the cadence is. For somebody, it's too much. If somebody who is really negotiating or really enjoy conflict, then that's their balance. You're talking about a beaver, right? They're spending all day in the water. To some animal, that's too much. You put a deer in the water all day long, it's going to absorb all the water and become bloated or whatever. Just an example.
Yeah, you're right. You can't fight all the time.
So the thing is, to a beaver, that's extremity. It's balance for him or it. And for Chris Voss, this is what he does, and this is what he's extremely good at. And for him, that's balance for him. But for us, it's extremes.
Do you think it's not extreme for him too? I mean,
no. He does this every day, and he has a long career, and he's still doing it. He's teaching the extreme negotiation tactic. They call it the Black Swan group, right? And
that's right. Yeah.
He's teaching corporate to negotiate contracts and everything like this. So he's enjoying these things. I mean, it's just something that he's really, you can call it a calling, for example. right? It's a
Yeah,
calling for
maybe
him to do that.
it's his meaningful work. It's his
It
purpose,
is
you
his
know. Yeah,
meaningful
yeah,
work,
yeah.
right? And he's teaching now too. You can go to masterclass.com, and he has a master class who will teach you some of the techniques as well.
Hmm.
This is what he does. So he enjoy it, and he writes a book. I mean, it's not like he writes multiple books. He writes just this one book. This is what he
Right,
knows
his whole
about,
life. Yeah, this is his whole
right?
life
And he
in a
continues to
nutshell.
teach, and he continues to do the same thing. So
Right.
to me, yeah, he's fitted for this. And for me, to say, well, why am I negotiating every single minute of every single hour? That's what he does every day. Every day he's teaching somebody. When he teaches, right? So he goes into, let's say he goes to Harvard and he's teaching the student, negotiator of the company, you would challenge him and he would actually negotiate back. So it's not like he has a set agenda that he teaches. He goes there and he would actually demonstrate, because people would test him and say, hey, kidnap my son and I want you to negotiate. He does that every day on the whim.
That's his art,
His art, and he's
yeah.
good at it. And for me, say, if I were to have to figure out how to negotiate, because everybody keeps challenging me because I'm quote unquote the top negotiator. Everybody's challenging me. Every time somebody meet me, they're gonna challenge me, right? And I have to defend that. To me, it's exhausting because that's not my
It's
characteristic,
not,
my attribute. But for
yeah.
him, it's like normal day, like everything he does is so normal and regular that for us it's extreme, but for him it's like, okay, it is a perfect day.
Right.
I get to role play with these people and I get to negotiate and then wow them at the same time.
That's I could not agree more. I wanted to end this one on a funny kind of note
Okay.
of this book. I don't know if you remember me telling you the story about, what do you do when you encounter a pit bull? Do you remember that when I told you
You're
about
gonna
this?
have to.
Okay,
I lost
so
it.
he talks about in this book, I was just pulling out my notes from the book because I haven't used this in a while, but I was listening to this book. Walked into the bedroom and I just heard this. I walked into Luca's nursery and my wife was in there and she was frustrated about something. Like, I don't remember exactly what was going on, just normal kid stuff. And he was talking through, what do you do when you encounter a pit bull? And he was like, he's like, you start with I'm sorry, and he's like, you use your late night DJ voice and then you mirror back.
I'm
And
sorry.
then so my wife, I walked into the room and I literally had just been listening to this and I she started complaining about something and I was like, I'm sorry, and I started to do the mirroring back, whatever to her, and then the situation diffused. It's kind of funny. And then I explained to her right afterwards. I was like, oh, guess what, I just learned what to deal with when dealing with the pit bull. I explained to her what I was going. She started laughing. It was pretty funny. So
it does work.
Yeah. So it does work. You could you start with
All right.
and then you mirror back with your DJ voice and you should be good to go. It was a fun application of learnings from this whole journey, but I would encourage you not to mess around with your wife.
No, I mean, I think you do it with the honorable intent, because at the end of the day, the book, it has multiple psychological concepts you can learn, but compatible to what I'm saying before is in the 7 habits of highly effective people, you seek first to understand, because you have to understand why your wife is angry. And you have to say, well, I understand. Now I can relate. And from there, you can say, well, maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that. Maybe you can nudge her to see from your perspective as well. The book may have this negotiation because you're talking about terrorists and hostages. So the book took on a different meaning, but the concept of the psychological tactic that you use is still the same. It's how you use it, because a gun is neither bad or good. A sword is neither bad or good. It's just how do you use it. If you're talking about having a gun and it's a police officer with honorable intent, well, he's here to protect. If you have somebody who is evil with a gun, well, they are here to hurt somebody. And so the concepts of psychology still applies. It depends on how you use it. So if you love your wife, you use it in that intent. If you don't, well, you need counseling.
I think that's actually one of the reasons why integrity was added to my core values list, because there's a lot of stuff that you could mess around with. I remember when we talked about nudge, I'm really torn on that whole entire libertarian paternalism, the whole concept of that in general. I feel like that's why integrity is there to support that, because you're right, you could use a lot of these tools to like just manipulate the hell out of people. And that's what you learn when you learn about yourself and you learn about humanity.
If you're using to manipulate your wife, you need counseling, because you're just wasting your time.
Or you just need a new wife, I guess, because you shouldn't have to do that to anybody to be able to get what you want. It should be a meaningful relationship, a meaningful relationship.
Does it
Right,
have to
right.
be that way? I mean, like I said, if you have to manipulate your wife, then you need a new wife. Or you need counseling. Something else is the root cause.
All right. Well, any other final thoughts for this one for the day?
Yeah, I think, we need to go back to look at that lesson we learned is seek first to understand. And so that's, to me, as far as this book is concerned, it is a great book and I recommend it. But do I want to piggyback on the 7 habits of highly effective people in terms of that's a concept that you should take away from this book.
Great lesson to leave with. And the question we can leave with everybody is, what are some of the biggest conflicts in your life? And, what were the lessons you learned from them? And I guess the idea would be and run at more of those if they align to the values of your life, and you'll learn really important lessons for really important areas of your life. So appreciate everybody joining, and we will be back for episode 100, which is kind of crazy. So we'll be back for episode 100
back
next.
and we'll celebrate a century mark.
That's pretty cool. Awesome. Well, we'll see you all soon.
All right. Bye-bye.